So now we are going to learn what fetal alcohol is. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD, like that?
Sí.
Okay, is an umbrella term that describes the range of effects that may occur to an individual whose mother drank alcohol during pregnancy. Now, FASD is not a diagnosis. It is just an umbrella term that describes diagnoses that are underneath. Now, there's a word that I want to point out, and that word is, FASD is an umbrella term that describes the range of effects that may occur. Drinking alcohol while pregnant does not lead directly to a diagnosis. It is just a contributing factor, which is important to understand because what we know from research is that there is no known safe amount of alcohol to consume while pregnant. So, prenatal exposure is just a risk factor. It does not link directly to a diagnosis. There are other factors that affect how alcohol alters the development of the fetus. The amount of damage, right, depends on mom's birth weight and height, her nutrition, when she drank during pregnancy, and the post and prenatal environment of her pregnancy. And do your best on this one, okay? The amount of damage depends on this. In our brain, we have something called the HPA, hypothalamus,
Hypothalamus,
pituitary
axis. No entiendo cómo.
They don't have to know that.
No.
What that does is produce a chemical when we're stressed out called cortisol.
Cortisol.
We all produce cortisol when we are stressed out. When a pregnant mother is in a bad environment and she's always stressed out, she produces a lot of cortisol. So alcohol plus stress plus cortisol equals lots of damage. So FASD is a spectrum, and the spectrum is all the way from loss of potential, which we cannot diagnose, all the way to severe health and cognitive issues. Because you'll always, when you're talking to other people about fetal alcohol, you're going to hear, well, my mom drank and I'm fine. And what I tell those people is I say that may be true, but what could you have been? So how it works is alcohol is water soluble. So when mom drinks, the alcohol passes right through the placenta into the bloodstream. So it passes right in through, I'm just trying to figure out where I am. So it passes right in through the bloodstream, right into the placenta, and oftentimes that when mom drinks, the baby is drinking 10 times more the amount of alcohol because they don't even have a liver. So think of this when you're explaining fetal alcohol to someone. So fetal means changes in normal development in utero. Alcohol is a teratogen that causes cell changes and damage. Spectrum means the damage is the difficulties present from mild to severe. There's a famous doctor in America, and his name is Dr. Bruce Perry, and he deals with childhood trauma, and he wrote a book called The Boy That Was Raised by Wolves. And at a conference I was at, he said that there is nothing effing mild about it. And then the disorder. It's the inability to function and adapt as expected throughout the lifespan. They cannot function as society expects them to throughout their life. Expectations is a heavy word. It's like wearing a backpack full of rocks your whole life. It's very heavy. I was at a conference and there was a woman with fetal alcohol, and she said one of the most profound things that I have ever experienced in my life. And she said, expectations are just premeditated resentment. Because she could not, so they would get mad at her for things that her brain wouldn't let her do. So there's three main diagnoses. And the reason I'm telling you this is because maybe your kids or your clients or your students have one of these diagnoses. And I'm going to make it easy to understand so when they teach other people, they can make it simple. So the first one is FAS, which is the fetal alcohol syndrome. So when you're teaching people, you say that's all of the face and all of the brain damage. So there's three major facial characteristics. The first one is a thin upper lip. The second one is a smooth philtrum. So when they feel under their nose, see how you have those bumps?
Yeah.
Theirs is smooth. The third one, do your best on this one,
La tercera
is called palpebral fissures. And it looks like there's extra skin, but that's not, right? It's the eyelid, it's the dimensions here, from here to here. Now, I don't spend a lot of time on fetal alcohol syndrome because I'm not a doctor. Most of us are not doctors. So I don't want you tomorrow going to your practice or your school or home and looking at somebody's face and saying, "We got one." The second one I want to focus on is called partial fetal alcohol syndrome. That does not mean just a little bit. What that means is they have some of the facial features and all of the brain damage. Clayton had partial fetal alcohol. And at first I thought that meant just a little bit. Trust me, it did not mean just a little bit. So he had the thin upper lip and the eyes and all of the brain damage. And the third one is called alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder. And what that means is that there is no facial features, but all of the brain damage. Here's one of the young men in the picture that I worked with, and he had ARND, and you couldn't tell. So when you teach people about ARND, you tell them that it is none of the face, but all of the brain. What that means is from all the people who suffer from fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, 90% are ARND. Less than 10% have facial features. So 90% of people you cannot tell. The only way you could tell is through their behavior / symptoms. There's no height, no growth, nothing. Same, normal, looks like us.
No.
And what was something that was a major aha moment for me is when I learned that the only way that somebody with fetal alcohol can get facial features is if mom drank on day 19, 20, and 21 of pregnancy. That's it. If there is no alcohol introduced in those 3 days, they will not have any facial features. The scientists, they know exactly how much alcohol, especially in rats, right? They can. Alcohol is one of the most studied drugs in all of the world. So that's how they know. Don't worry, I'm not just making it up. So that was a big moment for me to realize that only in those 3 days can someone get the facial features. Because here's what happens. What happens is 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. And oftentimes, mom will stop drinking only once she knows that she's pregnant. How long can you go before you know you're pregnant? 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. A mom can go a long time before she knows she's pregnant, and the damage is already done. So it's not. So I wanna dispel a myth. It is not just alcoholic moms who give birth to people with fetal alcohol. The number one demographic for women to give birth to someone with fetal alcohol are professional women who make between $70,000 and $80,000 a year and are not planning on getting pregnant. And they'll have a couple glasses of wine while making dinner. They'll go out on the weekend with the girl. They have a pregnancy that's not planned, and they don't know that they're pregnant, and they continue to drink until they find out. Because they have money, the kids often get diagnosed ADHD or autism. The second demographic are university women, because they don't need a reason to get drunk, right? It's Tuesday after class, let's go have beer, you know? Third is military families. When mom or dad come back from service, they're doing two things, and I'm sure you can guess what those are. They're drinking alcohol and making babies. My point is that alcohol doesn't care how much money you have, what color of your skin, where you're born. It does not care. Anywhere there is alcohol, there is fetal alcohol. So here's some current research, okay? So if you have to, and this is from the Canadian Association for Mental Health. The head researcher works for the World Health Organization. And what they did a study, and what they found, that half of people with fetal alcohol also have ADHD. 62% have vision impairment, a rate that is 30 times higher than the general population. 58% have hearing problems. That's more than 100 times higher than the general population. 83% have speech and language delays. And 91% suffer from impulsivity and inappropriate behavior. So now we're going to talk about primary characteristics. And how you explain this to people, you say, this is what comes with the package. And also say, for all the people taking pictures of the presentation, I'm going to send it to Teresa, and she can email. I'll give them my presentation. I'll give you the presentation, and you can get that, okay? And so not all people with fetal alcohol have all of these characteristics, because if they did, it would be very easy to diagnose. So some of this might make sense for some and not for others, and these deficits might present from mild to severe. So the first one is memory problems. More importantly, short-term memory. Memory is not just a singular aspect. It has multiple layers, which is confusing for parents because your kids might not understand a few instructions, but they can tell you everything that happened 2 years ago at an uncle's barbecue. See, right? Yeah, see. So, you know, they won't remember to flush the toilet, but they could tell you everything that happened during the barbecue.
Yeah.
See, right? So short-term memory, they may forget if you give them multiple instructions. Say if you give them 3 instructions, they might only do the first one or the last one. They forget names, phone numbers, appointments, right? But they can remember all the words to every song they've ever heard. Right. There is also something called source memory. Now, an example of when we use source memory, when we're having a conversation with someone, we might say we're talking about a movie, and we say, what was the name of the actor? And we're trying to remember, right? We say, what was the name? ¿Cómo se llama? Right, you know, what was the name? And then you remember. And so that is your source memory. It is looking for the source of the information. People on the spectrum who have deficits don't have good source memory, so they don't know where the information came from. So they don't know if someone on the TV said it, if the parent said it, if the teacher said it. They don't know who said it. So how can they discern if the information is even good enough if they don't know where it came from? There's also another part of memory. Have you ever had listen to someone with fetal alcohol tell a story, and as they're telling the story, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger? And you know that didn't happen, but they really believe that happened. And you'll say, that didn't happen. And they're like, oh yeah. Science has found that's a memory deficit, and those are called intrusion errors. So if you are consequencing someone with fetal alcohol for lying, you are consequencing their memory deficit. Number two, they may have slow cognitive and or auditory pace. Cognition means thinking.
He's asking if the problem of, or the deficit of memory causes fiction.
Friction?
No, fiction. They're inventing things.
Yeah, it just, all these colorful details. They could have heard somebody else tell a story and it becomes theirs, right?
Sí, es ficción. Igual han oído un cuento de otra persona y como no recuerda, la mezcla el cuento de otra persona con su cuento. Children believe what they're saying.
Sí.
Sí. Bueno, el Jeff está diciendo no son mentiras realmente, porque ellos creen, porque como no entienden, eso pasa con mi hijo, que él inventa cosas y él cree que es verdad. Como no recuerda, igual mezcla cosas de otros niños o de otras personas, se convierte en la verdad para él. Porque para mí una mentira es que él sabe que no es verdad y está diciendo otra cosa. Pero la memoria, como falla, está mezclando historias. Entonces realmente no es una mentira, es un invento, pero él lo cree.
So people see them as like storytellers and they're making things up, right?
Entonces la sociedad lo ven como niños que dicen cuentos que son mentiras y todo está inventado. Yeah.
Pero entonces no pueden distinguir la realidad de la ficción.
So they can't distinguish between reality and fiction.
Some cannot, some can.
Algunos. Ese es un aspecto que afecta a algunos niños y si afecta a algunos niños puede ser una cosa leve o grave.
Depends, the spectrum, it depends.
They can be affected like at a low level or
Yeah, it depends. Like no two people with fetal alcohol are the same, right? Because when mom was consuming alcohol during pregnancy, it was at different times of development. So when the brain was developing and the connections were being made, if there's alcohol introduced, the connections can get lost or it's wired differently. And so when alcohol is introduced, it's at a different time for everybody.
Los estudios que se han hecho, ¿hay diferencias entre el tipo de alcohol que consumen los países mediterráneos y los países del este?
Eastern
No.
Europe.
Alcohol is a teratogen. Alcohol is alcohol.
No,
Es que en otras jornadas sobre SAF dijeron que el consumo del vino que hacemos más en los países mediterráneos, al tener menos graduación que el alcohol de los países del este, afectaba de otra manera.
she's heard.
Different, the consumption is different, but alcohol is still alcohol, right? Right. So it doesn't matter what type or more question than that.
Sporádico.
Mucho alcohol en poco tiempo. Es decir, consumo de fin de semana.
There would be more damage if there was more, right? If there was a constant. But the majority of people don't drink like. But the chances, if they're drinking more, the damage will be more.
De todas maneras, yo creo que hoy no nos preocupa tanto cuánto y cuándo, cómo podemos beber, sino qué pasa cuando ya se ha hecho, porque ya lo tenemos en casa.
Yeah.
No matter how much, how little, they're damaged. Right. It doesn't matter. We're all here because our children are having a tough time. Our teenagers are having if you guys weren't having a tough time, you wouldn't be here. It's Sunday. You'd be doing something.
Sorry about it. Los estudios recientes, cuando estás hablando constantemente de estudios científicos, los estudios recientes, ¿qué dicen sobre el daño en el cerebro? ¿Qué posibilidades hay?
Oh, okay, so the damage is done, right? And I think, are you trying to talk about neuroplasticity? Well, the brain was born like that, okay? So you can't put pieces or recharge pieces that weren't there to begin with. Do you understand? But what we can do is make it easier for them by understanding their disability, right? Because when your brain is put together, there are some very solid connections and others that aren't so solid. And so what you want to do is strengthen the ones that are already connected. Okay, does that make sense? It's not an acquired brain injury. It's not like a concussion. It's not like something they had after they were born. They were born with this. Okay. So the second one, they may have slow cognitive or auditory pace. What I mean by slow cognitive pace is one of the sound bites or sayings we use is that they are 10-second kids in a 1-second world. They think slower. Does that mean they're stupid? No. It takes them longer to find the answer. It's like our brains is like we have a brand new computer and they have an old computer. It takes longer to process. That's right. It's an older computer, okay? An auditory pace, which means they may only hear every third or fourth word that you're saying. They hear slower. But what society does is talk really fast. So when you're talking to them, they may only pick up bits of the sentence and they try and put it together and try and make sense of it. Get a piece, but not the whole picture, right? And when we get mad at them, we talk even faster. Right? We do. Because we try to lecture them.
Okay.
And it doesn't work. And then they get frustrated and they freak out. Does that make sense? So they have difficulty making decisions. So they might they will make the same, if they make a wrong decision and then they'll say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And then the next day, they'll make the same decision. And then the next day, they'll make the same decision, right? It doesn't matter how many times they tell you they're sorry, and they might know what they did was wrong, but because of their impulses and their inability to make decisions, they'll still make the wrong decision. So as parents, we get frustrated that they make the same mistake over and over and over, and we assume that they learned their lesson, but they don't. So instead of getting frustrated, it's important to understand that this is a primary characteristic of their disability, which is not easy.
Discapacidad.
Which is not easy, right?
Que no.
Nothing I say is easy. It's all easier said than done. Wait, write the question. Tell them to write the question down.
Por favor.
The next one is called developmental dysmaturity. Dysmaturity is different than immaturity. Well, immaturity suggests that the person can function in a manner compatible with age. As you can imagine, when I was younger, I was immature. And so when I would act up, my mom would get mad and she would go, Jeffrey James Noble, sit up and shut up and pay attention. You know your mom's mad at you when she uses your full name. And then I would pay attention and I would act normally. Dysmaturity means the person is functioning at a level younger than their chronological age. So a lot of times, what you need to do is take their age and like cut it in half. So if someone is 10, they're actually functioning at a 5-year-old level. When I speak all over the world and I talk to parents, when I talk about dysmaturity, I say, how old are your kids really? Right? So if they're 10, they may be 5, and sometimes lower than that, 2, 3. It depends on the day, right? So a lot of times we will say to them, grow up, act your age, and they are acting their age, right? Where they are. They're acting their developmental age. So what we say, one of the sayings is, it's stage, not age. Which is hard because society expects people to act their age. It's tough. That's really tough. So when you go home, I want you to take however the age of your kid, and I want you to cut that in half. So if you have a 20-year-old, just look at them like they are a high-functioning 10-year-old. When you ask them to act their age, and you're asking them to do more than they are capable of doing, and that's when you see the reactions. That's when they get upset. When someone with fetal alcohol is mad, it is because you've asked them to do more than they're capable of. Because society expects that they're able to do it because of their chronological age, but that's just not the case. So they have difficulty with abstract concepts. Abstract concepts are things that are not real. So, like the existing in thought.
Es la número uno, la existencia en pensamiento o una idea, pero sin tener una existencia física o concreto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Luego, conceptos abstractos como amor y belleza.
So it's things that are not real. For example, money. Money is not real. It is pieces of paper with numbers on them. Value of money is the abstract concept. That's why when you give them an allowance and you say, this has to last you for a week, and then 10 minutes later they're asking you for more money. That's why they will trade their bicycle for a candy bar. Right? They don't understand the value of $1. And what is the consequences of that as you get older? Because these kids grow into adults. And what is one thing that you're supposed to manage as an adult? Money. Dinero, right? That's why I don't know do people here with disabilities get disability money, like Social Security, or in Canada, it's $1,000 a month. $1,000 per month. You want to come to Canada? Yeah, come to Canada. And that's why someone with fetal alcohol, if they have a job, they spend their money as soon as they get their paycheck. It's gone in like 2 days. Because they don't understand money. Another thing that's abstract is time. Time is an abstract concept. It doesn't exist. We made it up. So they don't understand time, and they don't even understand what 5 minutes is. So if I said break was in 5 minutes, you can get an internal sense of what 5 minutes is. If you tell someone with fetal alcohol to be ready in 5 minutes, you might as well tell them to be ready in December. Okay? So that's why we get so upset when we have appointments and things to do and they're not ready at the given time. So what are the consequences? What are the consequences of not understanding time when you become an adult? You're late for school.
Llegas tarde al cole.
You're late for work. I don't know, but if you're in trouble with the law, you miss probation or court. My mentor told me that if you can manage someone with fetal alcohol's time and money, 75% of their problems will go away. But society expects them to be able to manage that on their own. So instead of trying to teach your little niños about money, we need to get someone on the team that can help manage it for them. They will always have problems with time and money, always. Something else that's abstract are rules. Rules are different in every city, country, province, Everywhere rules are different. Rules are often nonverbal, like social rules. That's why they have trouble building relationships, because they don't know the social rules. So they have trouble making friends because they don't understand rules, plus they're also dismature. So they have trouble making friends with people their own age because they act younger. My sister is 40 years old, but she talks and acts like she is 15 years old. So she was always fighting and disagreeing with people her own age, but she got along with teenagers. Okay? That's why. So if your kids get along with younger kids, that's why, because of dismaturity. So society expects everyone to be able to manage these things on their own. And some living with fetal alcohol aren't able to do this. One of the sayings is that homelessness begins at birth for people with fetal alcohol. The next time you are out in the street and you see a homeless person that looks normal and may even talk normal, the chances are high that they have an alcohol-related disability. So we need to teach society to be more empathetic and not angry. People with fetal alcohol have a hard time transitioning from one activity to the next. They don't have mental flexibility. They can't go with the flow. So that's why if you say you are going to do something, you better do it when you say you're going to do it, or else they'll lose it. There are a lot of transitions that happen during the day. So for example, when you're sleeping, from sleep to awake, that is a transition. Getting ready for school and going to school, that is a transition. Transitioning between different subjects at school is a problem for them. So when a teacher says, Johnny, it's time to move on from economics to math, and Johnny doesn't listen, like it seems like Johnny isn't listening. Johnny needs more time to help him transition into the next activity. That's why schedule and routine is so important, because they have built a habit of the transitions. They know what's coming next.
O transiciones.
And that's why they may struggle if you change the plans last minute. Oh, okay, here, try this one. Is there a word for perseveration? To perseverate, to be stuck?
Explain it to me.
So they perseverate on something, like they get fixated, and that's all they think about, and they can't stop thinking about it.
Like obsessed with something.
Yeah, this seems like they become obsessed. That's called perseveration, right?
Bueno.
So if you read the definition,
Yeah.
see, it's continuation of something, usually to an unexceptional degree or beyond a desired point.
Okay. Hay la palabra perseveration, que es para mí poco utilizado en inglés, pero significa, para entenderlo, obsesiones.
Ah, see, huh? You see, right? So it doesn't matter what you say or what you tell them, they are stuck on that. That's right. Tell them it's like their brain is like a CD and it's got a scratch in it. And so they get stuck, and they over and over, and that's all they can think about, right? And as soon as they, and there's no explanation, and then they just will move on to something else. Right. This is a big one. So that's why with my boy, with Clayton, with Troy, I could only tell Troy that we were going to do an activity 10 minutes before we would do it. Because if I told Troy, scrap that. One time I told Troy that we were going to go to an amusement park in 2 weeks. We ended up going 2 days later because they got stuck. They got stuck. So on a more serious note, if they have a court date or an appointment, that they might perseverate over it, and it gets dangerous. So they get stuck, and then they get anxious because that's all they think about. They don't understand sarcasm. So if you are sarcastic, if you are sarcastic in nature, and you joke around with someone and I say to Teresa, oh, don't be so stupid. But I'm saying it with a smile on my face. They don't understand. They just heard that I said, don't be stupid. Okay? So that's why you'll say, oh, I was just joking. But they're still freaking out. Right? What you tell them is they take it literally. Right? So they're very literal. Yes, I'm going to leave that like that. Okay. So they also they suffer from gaps or disconnections. They may have difficulty translating between modalities. I'll explain. Maybe you don't have to say that. So they have difficulty translating in their brain. For example, they have problems from what they hear into action. They have trouble with thinking and then talking. So they may be in school and they know the answer, but they cannot say it. They may have problems from what they see and to put that into writing. So how frustrated would you be if you knew the answer, but you couldn't say it or you couldn't write it?
O escribir.
There was a young foster girl, who was a foster child, who was getting very low grades in school. And she was so frustrated, and she would tell her parents that I know the answer, but I cannot write it down. And so one time after a test that she had failed, she was leaving the classroom, and the teacher had stopped her. He brought her back into the classroom and asked the questions on the test, and then asked her to answer verbally. She could not write the answer, but she could say the answer. She's never had to write a single test again in her life, and she gets 70s and 80s, and now she's in university. Because she couldn't write what she knew. But what does society say when you take a test? Shut up. Be quiet, you have to use your own memory, and you have to write out the answer. We are teaching kids with disabilities all wrong. We are pointing out their weaknesses instead of encouraging their strengths. And it's all because of us and what we consider the rules and the right way to do it. We have to think about maybe making some changes. Because our kids can be very successful. We just have to figure out how they learn. They freak out a lot because they are just as frustrated with themselves as others are with them. I've never met a child that when you talk to them, that when you say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I've never heard a child say, when I grow up, I want to be an asshole. Right? That's true. I want to grow up and I want to be a drug addict. When I grow up, I want to be in prison, and when I grow up, I want to live on the street. I have never met a single child. And they're getting to that point because they are so frustrated that they give up. Because we are constantly asking for their brain to do things that they aren't able to do. Make sense? Tell them it's almost lunchtime. So not only is the brain affected, but the central nervous system is affected as well. The nervous system and the brain are developed at the same time. People living with fetal alcohol also may have severe sensory issues. Now, your senses, your sensory system is responsible for your sight, your hearing, your smell, what you taste, and what you touch.
Bueno, ya sabemos.
And so that can often be damaged as well. And so oftentimes maybe the lights can be too bright, the noise could be too loud, their skin can be very sensitive, or it's not sensitive, right? So, which is tough because they could get injured and not feel it. Or the slight touch can drive them crazy. The fabric of their clothes,
Puede molestar.
the scent in the room. Now I'm going to do a little exercise. And what I want everyone to do for 20 seconds, and this is going to be one of the only times that I shut up, but I want everyone to be quiet for 20 seconds and just listen. Go. Okay. Ask them what did they hear. Well, no, you have to tell him, and then he tells me.
The cars.
Cars, what else?
It's silence.
Okay. Did you hear that in the back, the tripping in the back, right? Okay. My point is that your brain filters out all that external noise so you can concentrate on my mouth, on what I'm saying. What happens if you can't filter out those external noises? Yeah, really, really tough, right? And so that's a lot of times what happens is they can't filter that, and so noise is amplified a million times. So I am going to show a video of what it looks like through somebody's eyes who has sensory problems.
Sobrecarga sensoria ocurre cuando hay demasiada información para el cerebro almacenar al mismo momento. Entonces, más o menos, hace más lento, se pierde la capacidad de procesar y se tumba como un ordenador. Sé que empiezo a sentir esto cuando me empiezo a enfadarme por ninguna razón obvio. Sí, a veces puede ser un resultado de sobrecarga y parece traumas traumas de humor. A veces solo me cierro a mí mismo. Vuelvo tranquilo y no presto atención a nada. O ignoro nada. Yeah.
I know, just
Ignoro todo, perdón.
don't worry, you don't have to do that. Ask if everyone can hear the clock.
Pregunta Jeff si todos pueden oír el reloj. El reloj.
Okay. This is what it's like for someone to go into a grocery store.
Eso es lo que puede pasar a alguien que va a una tienda.
You can go back there. So does that make sense? So it might not be the brain that is causing them problems. It could be their sensory issues. So as caregivers, as professionals, we have to recognize that it's all about their total environment. So if they're having tantrums, it could be because it's their sensory, it's their brain can't process all that information. That's why an occupational therapist must be your best friend. Because they will be able to tell what sensory issues your person might have. We got Clayton an occupational assessment. And we found out that he likes like lava lamps. Do you know a lava?
Esto.
So lava lamp. He likes neon lights. He liked a lot of things that I wouldn't find soothing, but he liked them. So we put all of those things that were sensory friendly to him in his room. So when he was having an episode, or when he was having a hard time coping, I stopped saying, "Go to your room, go have a timeout," because saying that implies that he is a problem, that it is his fault. Now we call it a brain break. He is able to go into his room, and he's able to self-soothe in 10 minutes. So now his room is a safe spot where he can go and calm down and not somewhere to go because he's in trouble. And then he would exit the room, he would come downstairs and say, "I'm sorry, I'm ready." Because if our language, and if we're always saying that they are the problem, they're bad, it's their fault, things are going to get worse. So we're going to break. We're break now, and then I'll talk about that stuff in the after. So it's going to get a little bit sadder after break, but they're going to leave happy. So don't go to lunch thinking all hope is lost.